Hi everyone, this is meteorologist Joel Curtis with your Alaska Weather TV show. Got lots of watches, warnings, and advisories tonight. Also, we have some interesting phenomena that's occurred over the day today. So let's get started. First of all, a few winter weather advisories along the Chukchi Sea coast, and as well as the western Seward Peninsula and St. Lawrence Island. Also, we have some warnings now showing up for southwestern Alaska for a developing weather system that's moving up into the Bering Sea. Blizzard warning for Bethel and King Salmon. That's 4 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Thursday. Also, a blizzard warning currently in effect for St. Paul Island, as well as a coastal flood warning for all the northwest-facing shores from Naknek down to Unimak Island. Also, we have a winter storm watch for both sides of the Kenai Peninsula, as well as the Cordova area, and those are for generally Thursday into Friday. We also have a winter storm watch for the Skagway area. Currently, a winter storm warning for Haines. They picked up 5.5 inches of snow this afternoon, with more expected into this evening. Also, we have a winter weather advisory for the Gustavus area, Glacier Bay, and as well as the Juneau, city and borough of Juneau. So, looking ahead, first of all, for Riverwatch, we'd sure love to have any ice observations that you've got going, and there's the email address to submit them, or you can call that 800 number on the screen. Now tonight, interestingly, right around 5 p.m., we have a conjunction of the Moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and Venus. And it's real interesting that all of these heavenly bodies are going to show up in the same area. The sun will be setting in the south-southwest area. Too bad that we don't have a lot of clear skies out tonight for the Alaska. But if you get a chance, take a look outside if you've got any clearing at all. And some of this same conjunction will be visible tomorrow evening. Also, there was a 50 earthquakes today off of Oregon, and there's absolutely no tsunami generated, although the couple of magnitudes were magnitude 5.8 for a few of these. If you want some further information on this, I'd advise going to npr.org and look for 50 earthquakes. So looking at our satellite image, we've got a weather system developing out by AKwx, and that system is spinning up. As you can see, some frontal systems are starting to form around it. Also, we have a weak system from all the way over from the Gulf of Anadyr across the Yukon Delta area, and then on over into the southern Kenai Peninsula. And then also there's a weak weather system pushing some precipitation onshore for southeastern Alaska. So for today's weather, first of all, we have that weak set of lows from the northern Bering Sea on across the St. Lawrence Island, and that's all connected by a big trough over to a 99 millibar low in the Gulf of Alaska off of Yakutat. Also, weak high pressure, 1,004 millibars along the Alcan. But watch this system, 986 millibars to out by AKwx. That's the one that's forming up and is going to cause so many problems over the next couple of days. That system deepens to 965 millibars in the eastern Bering Sea, northwest of Coal Bay. Quite a frontal system wrapped around it. Still some weak troughing along over the central portion of the state, as well as that old low 996 millibars, pushing some moisture on to the Alaska Panhandle. And then by Thursday, we've got it's deep into 962 millibars as it reforms over Shelikof Strait. Quite a lot of wrapped moisture around this low, a very strong frontal system, lots and lots of wind, so any place the snow can blow or be blowing snow, plenty of snow and out in front of it. The rain stays out in the Gulf, and snow moves onshore to the eastern parts of the Gulf. And then for Friday, that system stays at 961 millibars. Again, any place with where you see those lots of lines on the map, that indicates lots of wind, and there will be plenty of opportunity for blowing snow. Snow out ahead of this system. As you can see now, the warm air is getting wrapped up, and really generally snow showers out behind that system as well as into the Bering Sea. So our low temperatures Thursday morning, starting out in the 30s as you go farther south in the Panhandle, but down to 18 as you get up to Skagway, 23 for Yakutat. Similar situation for South Central with 0 for Talkeetna, minus 11 for Glen Allen, 10 for Valdez, and 6 as you get down to Kenai, 8 for Anchorage, and then 20 as you get down to Homer, and 28 for Kodiak. For a high temperature Thursday afternoon, temperatures generally in the 30s, some above freezing for much of the Panhandle, but still 25 for Skagway, 28 for Yakutat. Single digits for the Copper River Basin, but 17 for Talkeetna, 21 for Anchorage, 21 for Kenai, and 33 for Homer, and then 41 for Kodiak Island. And then Friday morning, again, temperatures in the lower 30s generally for southeast Alaska, but down to 22 as you get up to Skagway, 27 for Yakutat, 0 degrees for the Glen Allen area, 13 for Talkeetna, 17 for Anchorage, 27 for Homer, and 35 for Kodiak Island. And then our high temperatures Friday afternoon in the lower 40s, up into the mid-30s as you get for most of the Panhandle, but 31 for Yakutat, 6 for Glen Allen, 20 for Talkeetna, 27 for Valdez, 22 for Anchorage, 30 for Homer, and 38 for Kodiak. Along the North Slope, single digits below 0 for most of the North Slope, and minus 18 for Dead Horse. And then as you get a little bit further south inland, in the minus teens and minus 21 in the eastern Brooks Range, minus 15 for Fort Yukon, minus 5 for Fairbanks, and minus 2 for Nome, and a little bit warmer as you get further south. For Thursday afternoon, we've got temperatures in the single digits, but minus 8 for Dead Horse, minus 9 for Fort Yukon, plus 3 for Fairbanks, plus 8 for Nome. And then for Friday morning, we've got temperatures again in the minus teens and all the way down in minus 20s as you get into the Brooks Range, and then minus 5 for Fairbanks, minus 9 for Nome. And then looking ahead, Friday afternoon, single digits is along the North Slope, some below 0. And then 2 for Fort Yukon, 5 for Fairbanks, minus 2 for Nome, minus 6 for Kotzebue. And then for southwestern Alaska, we have temperatures in the teens and 20s, 27 for the Pribilofs, 30 for Cold Bay, and then 30s and even 20 as you get out towards Shemya. And then as Thursday afternoon, now the north winds start kicking in behind that system, and as you can see, temperatures in the 20s for southwestern Alaska, still a little above freezing for the Bristol Bay area, and all above freezing as you go out the Alaska Peninsula, 31 for the Pribilofs. Friday morning, now the temperatures really start dropping in the southwest. Minus 1 for Bethel, 10 for King Salmon, 22 for Kodiak, for Cold Bay, and 22 for the Pribilofs. And then Friday afternoon, temperatures rising into the teens for Bristol Bay, but a lot of single digits as you get further inland, and in the 20s and lower 30s as you go out the Alaska Peninsula. So now looking ahead to our 6 to 10 day outlook, a pretty good chance that the Panhandle is going to be much below normal temperatures, and then also still in that cooling trend all the way up to Utiagavik and almost to Nome, normal for the rest of the state. And then a little bit above normal precipitation expected for the central portions of the mainland, and on over into the Juneau and Yakutat area, also Kodiak Island. For an 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, again, below normal expected for the southeast Alaska and getting toward normal as you go further and further up into the mainland Alaska. And then our 8 to 14 day precipitation, we've got lots of just a little bit below normal chance for the southeastern interior. Normal precipitation expected for a couple of weeks out as you get toward the northwest. So don't forget all these watches and warnings, advisories. Really fluid situation out there with this major developing system moving up into Bristol Bay there. And please stay tuned to the latest, your latest sources of weather information tomorrow as we see how this system evolves. So stay safe out there, and thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate you watching.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi everyone, and now for aviation weather segment. Starting out with the flying weather Thursday morning, we've got extensive area of IFR over the northern Bering Sea, as well as the Bristol Bay out to the Pribilofs, Alaska Peninsula, and part of Kodiak Island, also Cook Inlet for the Yukon Flats. And then we got a couple of small areas of IFR in the Panhandle. And then moving along to Thursday afternoon, we have extensive IFR over the central Bering Sea on down to the far western Aleutians, also the Bristol Bay area in southwest Alaska. IFR moving up into Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, and some IFR over in southeast Alaska, particularly the Lynn Canal area and off the Chukchi Sea. Looking again to Friday morning, we've got now extensive IFR over the Cook Inlet area, also for the western Alaska range, Yukon Flats, north of St. Lawrence Island, some along the Chukchi Sea coast, and then IFR extending over into southeast Alaska, all for the entire Panhandle, with that weather system moving in. Then Friday afternoon, IFR again along the Chukchi Sea, also the central interior. Then we have IFR for Prince William Sound on over to Yakutat, and lots of marginal VFR flying elsewhere. For our pass conditions on Thursday, Anaktuvik, marginal VFR. Adigan Pass, marginal VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, both IFR. Rainy Pass, marginal VFR. Windy Pass, marginal VFR. Isabel Pass, VFR becoming marginal VFR. Mentasta Pass, VFR. Tanita Pass, IFR becoming marginal VFR. Portage Pass, IFR. Chilkoot and White Pass, marginal VFR becoming IFR. For freezing levels Thursday morning, down at the surface for most of the Bering Sea, down across the Alaska Peninsula, including Kodiak Island, and also down through Dixon Entrance, and then up to about 2,000 feet for the central Aleutians, and also out by the Shumagon Islands. For our icing on Thursday, we have one area of considerable moderate all along the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and on up into lower Cook Inlet, which would include the Homer area, and that's between 3,000 and 15,000 feet. For the mainland portion, between 2,000 and 6,000 feet for isolated moderate icing. For the Aleutians, between 3,000 and 8,000 feet, and for southeast Alaska, between 3,000 and 8,000 feet. For a jet stream on Thursday, most of the activity is south of the Gulf of Alaska. However, we have two branches meeting just south of the central Aleutians, up to about 115 knots or so, and 65 knot westerlies across much of the state. For 9,000 foot winds on Thursday, we've got two low centers. The main low center located about Bristol Bay or so. Northwesterlies 85 knots crossing the Alaska Peninsula, and South-southeast winds over Cook Inlet about 60 knots or so, tapering off to 45 as you get up into the interior, and fairly light winds, westerlies about 20 knots over the Panhandle. For our 3,000-foot winds on Thursday, the secondary circulation out in the Bering Sea, but the main story really is northwesterly starting out about 50 knots or so just off of Nunivak Island, crossing the Alaska Peninsula at about 70 knots, and then coming up into Prince William Sound about 55 knots. And of course, this is going to generate some turbulence. And our turbulence forecast on Thursday, we have some considerable moderate over the central interior as well as St. Lawrence Island. But the big story is considerable moderate turbulence from Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and all the way out the Aleutians. Surface to 6,000 feet as we get up toward Cook Inlet, but surface to 4,000 feet as we cross the Aleutians. And that's our aviation forecast. Be sure to file a flight plan. Also, for those past forecasts, be sure and check for air vents for turbulence and icing as we get closer tomorrow when you get your pre-flight briefing. So thanks for tuning in on the weather, and fly safe out there.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, joined once again by the science liaison of GINA, Eric Stevens. GINA, of course, is the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And GINA is all about satellites, and Eric is always here to tell some really cool stuff about satellites. Now, the last time you were here, we talked about how the weather satellites can see clouds and what's under the clouds, but you're telling me that satellites can do a lot more, even protect the general public with aviation safety information.
That's right. There's one particular aspect of satellites we're going to talk about today that might not be immediately obvious, and that is detecting things in the atmosphere that are not clouds, that are not snow, not rain, but rather a hazard that can happen here in Alaska, and that is volcanic ash.
Of course.
When a volcano goes off, puts ash in the air, this is of course a hazard to the public if the ash were to fall on the ground in accumulating amounts.
Sure.
Additionally, while the ash is in the air, and this is the more frequent hazard, is it's a hazard to aviation because you cannot fly an airplane into volcanic ash without great risk. Worst case scenario, the ash gets into a jet engine, wrecks the engine, kills the engine, and now you have an airplane flying with no engines. It won't fly for long. So aviators need to avoid that ash. How do you avoid the ash? You have to know where it is by identifying it with a satellite image and perhaps predicting then where the ash will flow with the overall weather patterns. Satellites are so important for identifying when a volcano goes off and then tracking the ash after the volcano injects the ash into the atmosphere.
Now, are you talking about seeing the heat signature or a huge volcanic plume with a cloud that we're used to seeing in the really pretty pictures of any Alaska volcano that's erupted recently, Redoubt, for example? Or are we talking about the really fine details? Because this is polar orbiting satellites, the ones that are very low to the ground, right?
The geostationary satellites can do some detection. The polar orbiters, like you say, they're closer to the Earth. They give the even better view. In answer to your question, I would say all of the above. A heat signature from a volcano going off with all the heat that comes with the eruption, that can be identified in infrared imagery. We've got images from the Kamchatka Peninsula. That's the far eastern part of Russia on the western side of the Bering Sea, loaded with volcanoes. You know, Alaska has plenty of volcanoes of its own. We can also be affected when a volcano goes off in Kamchatka, say, and then the weather carries that ash toward Alaska from the west. You can see the infrared heat signature, like you say. Also, the ash in the air can be detected by doing some sophisticated channel differencing within the satellite data. You can find the identification of sulfur dioxide, say, that's a component of the volcanic emission, and you can trace this with the satellite imagery. Sometimes volcanoes go off that haven't gone off before, and we're not expecting them to go off. Say if there's no seismometers around a given volcano that hasn't gone off in 100 years, you might not be expecting it to go off. In the satellite imagery, since satellites can be globally comprehensive, that might be the first sign that you have that a volcano in an unexpected area is going off.
So it's a good backup system. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And people are working all the time on automating the interrogation of satellite data by computers to provide a first alert to a human, so the software will say, we think this might be important. Human, go take a closer look. Because the people are still the best way to interrogate the imagery, but the planet's a big place, and we can't be looking everywhere all the time, so the software helps give a first cut. And then in Alaska, there's a special kind of surprise angle where the satellites are helpful, and that is the Katmai eruption of 1912. Huge eruption. There is still somewhat of a moonscape out there in southwest Alaska where all this ash is laying on the ground. And sometimes a strong weather pattern comes along where we have roaring northwest winds that go across the Alaska Peninsula there and can actually pick some of this ash up off the ground. No volcano is going off. This was more than 100 years ago that volcano actually blew. So you're not going to see a heat signature like we were discussing. There will be no seismic signature of a volcano going off. So those data sets, they'll say, oh, no problem. But you can see in some of the satellite imagery this ash, as it's called, resuspended. When the wind comes along, picks it up, the ash can be lofted a few thousand feet in the air just with the wind. And an airplane flying into that plume is exposed to some danger. So we need to track that ash to provide guidance to aviators that you don't want to be flying here at these elevations in this area. We've got some imagery of the resuspension, and you can see the wind blowing strongly from the northwest, picking up the ash and blowing it down to the southeast. And so that's another, perhaps not immediately obvious hazard of volcanic ash. Katmai is the gift that keeps on giving, for sure.
Very good. So we've got satellites that can help us understand the weather from the past and the immediate past. And we talked last time about how that's feeding into the forecast modeling to help improve predictions. But now they're also protecting the general public with aviation-sensitive information and watching volcanoes, whether they're erupting or maybe have erupted in the past, and finding the left-behinds from those volcanic events there. So really impressive stuff. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again today. And you're a gift that keeps on giving from the satellite community, so thanks a lot, and we hope to have you back again soon. Again, Eric Stevens with Gina at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And if you'd like to check out any of the information that Eric has shared with us again today, you can do that very easily by going to www.gina.alaska.edu. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And now for your marine weather segment. Starting out with our ice edge today, we lost a little bit of ice with the storm last weekend, but it's already starting to reform and move back. And then with the northerly winds that are coming up behind this weather system that's approaching into the Bering Sea, what will happen is the ice growth could be rapid and could be up to 20 miles per day. So we'll keep an eye on that. Also, same thing for Cook Inlet. For Thursday's marine forecast, first of all, we've got winds about 30 knots, different directions on the offshore, seas up to 20 feet, long fetch, big swell, and on the inside waters 10 to 20 knots, seas up to 8 feet down in Clarence Strait, otherwise 2 to 4 feet in the other inside waters. For Friday's marine forecast, looks like a lot of onshore flow, 25 to 30 knots with some rather large seas ranging up to 21 feet. And then on the inside waters, gale force 35 knots out of the south down in Clarence Strait with 17-foot seas, otherwise 20 to 25 knots in most of the inside waters and seas up to 5 feet. For the south central waters, a lot of easterlies kicking in, up to gale force 40 knots, seas 12 feet. And then for Cook Inlet, wind ranging from 35 to 45 knots and seas up to 18 feet down off of Coghlan Island. And then as we get to Friday, look for that circulation around that deep low. 50-knot northwesterlies and seas 15 feet coming out of Kennedy Entrance. In the meantime, 15 to 20 knots in the rest of Cook Inlet and up to 45 knots off the Barren Islands, as well as 20 to 30 knots in the eastern waters, seas up to 21 feet. And then for the Kodiak Peninsula, Kodiak Island and Alaska Peninsula, storm force up to 65 knots, seas up to 30 feet on the Bering Sea side and up to 26 feet on the Pacific side. And then for Friday's marine forecast, we have all northwesterlies, still storm force, 55 knots on the Pacific side, seas up to 23 feet, and on the Bering Sea side, whole gale, 45 knots, seas up to 24 feet. For the Aleutian Chain, starting out with a lot of strong whole gales, westerlies generally, seas in the 20s just about everywhere, and storm force 55 knots out of the west, south of Unalaska, seas 25 feet. And then the Aleutian Chain, you can see the wind is really starting to diminish. Still gale force up to 45 knots south of Unalaska, seas 19 feet. Seas up to 26 feet on the Bering Sea side. Then along the west coast, we have the northerlies already kicking in on Thursday. Wind up to storm force, 55 knots in the Pribilofs, 50 knots south of Nunivak Island, but then it backs off to 25 knots as you get up into Norton Sound. Biggest seas, 21 feet in the Pribilofs. And then on Friday, winds coming around the northwest, still a whole gale, 45 knots south of Nunivak Island, seas up to 20 feet in the Pribilofs and down to 30 knots in Norton Sound. And then as we get to the North Slope and the Bering Strait, gale force, 35 knot northerly, seas 10 feet. Every place else is ice covered and winds ranging from 10 up to 25 knots. And then on Friday, we get a mixed bag of winds, 10 to 15 knots on the North Slope. But as you start getting down toward Point Lay, 30 to 35 knots, seas 11 feet in ice-free waters. So looking a recap of tonight's weather, I've got that developing system to 965 millibars in the eastern Bering Sea. And then on Thursday, that redevelops in Shelikof Strait, 962 millibars, with a lot of precipitation and blowing snow around that system. Finally, then as Friday, the low moves very, very slowly toward the east, 961 millibars, and lots of precipitation and blowing snow out there. Keep a weather eye if you're out on the water, and thanks for tuning in.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.